Picture this. It is 3 o'clock in the morning somewhere in the central Zagros mountains of Iran. The air is bone dry. The only sound is wind scraping across limestone ridges that haven't changed shape in 40 million years. There are no lights, no roads, no structures visible for miles in any direction. A satellite passes overhead, its synthetic aperture radar painting the terrain in ghostly white and gray. And it sees nothing, absolutely nothing. But 500 meters directly beneath that barren ridgeline, behind blast doors designed to withstand a direct nuclear detonation, over 150 ballistic missiles sit fueled, armed, and pointed at targets across the Middle East and beyond. Their launch crews are on permanent rotation. Their countdown sequences can be initiated in under 4 minutes. And the United States military, with all its trillion-dollar technology, with all its carrier strike groups and stealth bombers and precision-guided munitions, currently has no reliable way to destroy them. Not one. This is the classified assessment that has been circulating inside the Pentagon's Joint Staff since late 2023, and it has fundamentally changed every war plan the United States has ever drawn up for a potential conflict with the Islamic Republic. Welcome to Iran's underground missile cities, and the story of how they just made the most powerful military on Earth flinch. For decades, the Western security framework in the Middle East rested on a single elegant assumption: air superiority equals dominance. If you control the skies, you control the outcome. Every war plan against Iran since Operation Praying Mantis in 1988 was built on this logic. The B-2 Spirit would slip through Iranian airspace undetected. The F-22 Raptor would sanitize the skies of any fighter resistance. And then wave after wave of precision-guided munitions would methodically dismantle Iran's nuclear facilities, its command and control nodes, and above all, its missile arsenals. Clean, surgical, decisive. That was the old world. And Amanda, that old world is dead. What killed it wasn't a single weapon or a single event. It was a 25-year engineering project of almost incomprehensible scale, conducted in total secrecy, under millions of tons of granite, by a branch of the Iranian military that most Western analysts didn't even take seriously until it was far too late. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, under the command of Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, did something that no other adversary of the United States has ever successfully accomplished. They made their most strategic weapons functionally invulnerable to American air power, and they did it not with cutting-edge technology, not with cyber warfare, not with space-based defenses. They did it with shovels, tunnel-boring machines, and the oldest defensive strategy in the history of warfare. They went underground, deep underground, and they built cities. The first credible Western intelligence on Iran's underground missile program surfaced in 2015, when the IRGC itself released carefully edited footage of a facility they called Underground Missile City No. 1. The video showed long, cathedral-like tunnels carved directly into mountain rock, with rows of Imad and Ghadar ballistic missiles mounted on mobile transporter erector launchers, ready for immediate deployment. Western analysts at the time were skeptical. Many dismissed the footage as propaganda, exaggerated for domestic consumption. The tunnels looked too clean, too organized, too Hollywood. Surely this was a single showcase facility, not a systemic capability. They were wrong, and the price of that error has been strategic. But the real shock was what came next. By 2021, commercial satellite imagery companies like Planet Labs and Maxar Technologies began identifying surface-level indicators of not one, not two, but an estimated 40 to 60 separate underground missile installations scattered across Iran's mountainous interior. Ventilation shafts disguised as natural rock formations. Hardened tunnel entrances wide enough to accommodate trailer-mounted missile launchers. Rail systems visible at tunnel mouths before being hastily camouflaged. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, published a landmark report that year confirming the scope of what Iran had built, and the numbers were staggering. According to CSIS senior fellow Thomas Caraco, the dispersal pattern alone made a comprehensive first strike against Iran's missile force, quote, operationally impractical with current conventional capabilities. Let that sink in. The most well-funded, most technologically advanced military alliance in human history looked at the problem and said, we cannot solve this. Moreover, the geological reality makes the engineering challenge almost impossible to overcome from the air. Iran's Zagros mountain range, which stretches over 1,500 kilometers from the northwest to the southeast of the country, is composed primarily of Cretaceous-era limestone and granite formations. In many locations, the overhead rock cover above these tunnel complexes exceeds 300 meters of solid, undisturbed stone. To put that in perspective, the most powerful conventional bunker buster in the American arsenal is the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, a 30,000-pound weapon carried exclusively by the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. The GBU-57 was specifically designed to defeat hardened and deeply buried targets. It is an engineering marvel. It uses a GPS-aided inertial navigation system to guide its 20,000-pound penetrating warhead through layer after layer of reinforced concrete and earth. Its official penetration capability is classified, but open-source defense analysts estimate it can defeat approximately 60 meters of moderately hard rock or 40 meters of reinforced concrete. 60 meters. Iran's tunnels sit beneath 300 meters. That is a five-fold deficit. Even if the United States dropped 5 GBU-57s on the exact same impact point in sequence, a tactic known as terrain denial stacking, the cumulative penetration would still fall catastrophically short. The math simply does not work, and the Pentagon knows it. But while the world debated whether American bombs could reach those tunnels, something far more sinister was happening inside them. Something that changed the entire calculus of this confrontation from a question of capability to a question of survival. What Iran was doing inside those mountains wasn't just storing missiles. They were building a fully autonomous launch infrastructure designed to survive a decapitation strike and still deliver a devastating retaliatory blow. Intelligence assessments shared between the Defense Intelligence Agency and Allied services in 2023 revealed that at least 12 of the confirmed underground complexes are equipped with independent command and control systems, dedicated power generation, water recycling, air filtration, and enough supplies to sustain launch crews for up to 90 days without any contact with the surface. 90 days. That means even if the United States and its allies managed to destroy every government building in Tehran, every above-ground military installation, every communications tower, and every known IRGC headquarters, those 12 facilities could continue to operate, continue to target, continue to launch, each one functioning as a self-contained war machine buried beneath a mountain, invisible to satellites, impervious to bombs, and answering to pre-delegated launch authorities who do not need permission from anyone on the surface to initiate a strike. This is what Pentagon planners now refer to internally as the Hydra problem. You can cut the head, but the body keeps fighting, and each underground city is a body unto itself. Now let me walk you through the specific weapons sitting inside these tunnels, because this is where the technical picture becomes truly alarming. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the IISS Military Balance Report for 2024, Iran's underground arsenal includes multiple variants of medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles. The Shahab-3, with a range of approximately 1,300 kilometers, capable of reaching any target in Israel, Saudi Arabia, or the UAE. The Ghadr-110, an improved Shahab variant with a redesigned re-entry vehicle for greater accuracy, estimated circular error probable of under 300 meters. The Imad, Iran's first precision-guided ballistic missile, with a maneuverable re-entry vehicle specifically designed to defeat missile defense interceptors like the Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 systems deployed by Israel. The crew receives the order. The missile leaves the tunnel on its mobile launcher, and within minutes, it is airborne. But the real nightmare feature of the K-Bar-Shikan is its hypersonic glide vehicle warhead. This is a 1,500-kilometer range missile with a reported payload capacity of over 1,500 kilograms. It uses solid fuel propulsion, which means it requires virtually no preparation time before launch. No fueling, no lengthy countdown. The crew receives the order. The missile leaves the tunnel on its mobile launcher, and within minutes, it is airborne. But the real nightmare feature of the K-Bar-Shikan is its hypersonic glide vehicle warhead. Iranian state media and corroborating analysis from the Middlebury Institute of International Studies suggest that this re-entry vehicle can maneuver at speeds exceeding Mach 8 during its terminal phase, executing unpredictable lateral corrections that make interception by any currently deployed missile defense system, including America's THAAD and Israel's Arrow 3, statistically unreliable. The word unreliable here is doing a lot of heavy lifting, Amanda. What it actually means is that for every 10 kbar seconds launched, current defense systems might intercept 3, maybe 4 on a good day. The remaining 6 or 7 reach their targets, and Iran has been mass producing them. While the media ignored this, the IRGC Aerospace Force conducted a series of so-called Great Prophet exercises between 2022 and 2024 that demonstrated something unprecedented. During Great Prophet 17, held in December 2022, Iranian forces launched simultaneous salvos from multiple underground facilities across 3 different provinces, striking simulated targets with a coordination and timing that NATO analysts described as, quote, consistent with a mature, networked, and rehearsed strike doctrine. This was not a country testing weapons. This was a country rehearsing a war plan designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer volume and simultaneity. The doctrine even has a name in IRGC strategic literature. They call it missile rain. And the concept is brutally simple. You do not need every missile to penetrate enemy defenses. You need enough missiles launched at the same time from enough dispersed locations that the defender's interceptor inventory is physically exhausted before the final wave arrives. The math, again, is unforgiving. Israel's Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow systems combined hold an estimated inventory of approximately 2,000 interceptors at peak readiness. Iran's confirmed ballistic missile stockpile, according to the CSIS Missile Defense Project, exceeds 3,500 units, and that count does not include cruise missiles, armed drones, or the arsenals of Iranian proxies. The defender runs out of ammunition before the attacker runs out of missiles. That is the equation that keeps Pentagon planners awake at 3 in the morning. This isn't just a desert standoff between rival governments. In a moment, I'll show you how this underground empire just put a target on the global economy and sent shockwaves straight into your own bank account. End of part 1. Because the strategic implications extend far beyond the military domain. Iran's underground missile cities do not just threaten military bases and airfields. They hold at risk the entire energy infrastructure of the Persian Gulf. Approximately 21 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That is roughly 21% of global petroleum consumption. The Khaybar Shekan, launched from underground facilities in Fars or Isfahan province, can reach any point along the Gulf coastline in under 7 minutes. Saudi Aramco's Abqaiq processing facility, the single most important oil installation on the planet, processing nearly 7 million barrels per day, sits well within range. So does the Ras Tanura export terminal. So does the Jebel Ali port complex in Dubai. So does every American military installation in Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. A coordinated missile rain salvo against these targets would not just cause a regional crisis. It would trigger an instantaneous global energy shock that Bloomberg Economics has modeled as a potential $130 per barrel oil spike within 72 hours. That translates to $6 per gallon gasoline in the United States, an immediate recession trigger in Europe, and a catastrophic supply chain disruption across Asia. This is not a hypothetical scenario in some academic war game. This is an operational capability that exists right now, today, beneath the mountains of Iran. And this brings us to the most dangerous question of all. What happens when a country that cannot be disarmed decides it no longer needs to negotiate? But while American strategists wrestled with the Hydra problem, a quiet betrayal was unfolding behind closed doors, because not everyone in Washington wanted this information to reach the public. For years, a faction within the Pentagon's civilian leadership actively downplayed the significance of Iran's underground missile program, not because the intelligence was unclear, it was crystal clear, but because acknowledging the full scope of Iran's subterranean arsenal would mean admitting something that no American defense secretary, no chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and certainly no sitting president wanted to say out loud. It would mean admitting that 2 decades of American missile defense investment had failed to produce a system capable of neutralizing the threat, posed by a country with a GDP smaller than that of the state of New Jersey. And Amanda, that admission carries consequences far beyond Washington. According to reporting by Defense One, and corroborated by former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Daniel Shapiro, internal Pentagon briefings on Iran's underground capabilities were repeatedly flagged for sensitivity review before being shared with congressional oversight committees. Key satellite imagery was withheld. Range estimates were presented with artificially widened uncertainty margins. And the DIA's own assessment that Iran's underground network could survive a sustained 72-hour American air campaign was reportedly edited to read, "could potentially survive limited strike operations." The difference between those two phrases is the difference between a war that can be won and a war that cannot. When pressed by the Senate Armed Services Committee in a closed hearing in March 2024, a senior defense official reportedly stated, quote, "Presenting worst-case scenarios without context risks constraining the president's decision space." In plain language, they softened the truth because the truth was too inconvenient for policy. But the truth does not care about policy, and the truth is now staring the entire Western alliance in the face, because while Washington debated language in classified briefings, Iran continued to dig, continued to produce, continued to harden, and most critically, continued to diversify. The latest intelligence cycle, covering the first quarter of 2025, indicates that Iran has begun deploying a new generation of solid-fuel intermediate-range ballistic missiles designated the Fatah-2 inside its underground complexes. The Fatah-2 represents a categorical leap. The missile employs a hypersonic glide vehicle with an independently maneuverable warhead capable of Mach 13 to 15 during its terminal descent phase, Mach 15. That is approximately 11,500 miles per hour. At that velocity, the Fatah-2 covers the distance from its launch point in central Iran to Tel Aviv in under 9 minutes. The Arrow 3, Israel's most advanced exo-atmospheric interceptor, was designed to engage ballistic targets following predictable parabolic trajectories. A hypersonic glide vehicle does not follow a parabolic trajectory. It skips and weaves through the upper atmosphere like a stone across water, pulling unpredictable lateral maneuvers of 6 to 8 G-forces that exceed the tracking envelope of every radar system currently deployed. There were only minutes in any engagement window, and those minutes were no longer enough. The interceptor would arrive where the warhead was, but the warhead would no longer be there. This is the nightmare that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth inherited when he took office, and the options available to him range from inadequate to catastrophic. Let me walk through all three scenarios that are currently being gamed out in the E-ring of the Pentagon right now. The first scenario is managed de-escalation. In this framework, the United States accepts that Iran's underground missile force constitutes a de facto deterrent. Washington pivots to a containment strategy. Diplomatic channels are reopened, potentially through Omani intermediaries. Nobody gets a war. This is favored by the State Department and European allies. The probability is estimated at roughly 25%, low, because it requires trust. The second scenario is regional realignment. The realization that American air power cannot neutralize Iran's missile force triggers a restructuring of security alliances. Saudi Arabia and the UAE accelerate their own missile programs. Riyadh discusses DF-21 purchase with Beijing. Israel intensifies its own offensive capabilities, potentially declaring its nuclear arsenal, a Cold War with 6 players instead of 2. The probability is estimated at roughly 45%. It is the most likely outcome. The third scenario is the one that nobody wants to discuss. Total escalation. A triggering event initiates a kinetic exchange. The US launches B-2s with MOP bombs. The damage is significant, but the rock holds. Iran retaliates with missile rain. Hundreds of missiles erupt from tunnel mouths. Global oil prices detonate. NATO Article 5 is triggered. The question becomes not how to win, but how to stop. The probability is estimated at 30%, unacceptably high. And this is the reality that the existence of Iran's underground missile cities has created. Not a single dramatic revelation, but a slow, grinding, geological shift in the balance of power that cannot be reversed by any weapon currently in existence. Iran identified the one thing that American military supremacy cannot defeat: depth, raw, geological, immovable depth, and it buried its most powerful weapons inside it. The great irony, Amanda, is that the most technologically advanced military civilization in human history has been strategically checkmated by mountains, by rock that was old when the dinosaurs were young, by tunnels dug with patience and purpose. Every B-2 flight carries with it the assumption that the sky is the domain of the powerful. For 70 years that assumption held, over Berlin, Baghdad, Belgrade. But it does not hold over the Zagros Mountains, because beneath those ridgelines, Iran has built something that the sky cannot touch. Until diplomacy achieves what bombs cannot, those missiles will remain, armed, hidden, patient, waiting. The Pentagon spent $350 billion building a shield. Iran spent a fraction building cities inside mountains, and today, the mountains are winning. The age of air supremacy ended with a tunnel. If this breakdown shifted your understanding, subscribe now and hit that notification bell. Stay sharp. The ground beneath your feet is not as solid as you think.